Hey, it's me, Wilhelm, back with more What Weirdness Did We Do in Our Homeschool Days? So if you didn't see my other video, essentially what this is a series I'm going to be doing about different things from my childhood, being raised homeschooled for 12 years, and things that I thought were normal and weren't to the rest of the world. And I sometimes will tell these stories, think it's funny, and then people will look at me and they just get this sad expression on their face like, I am so sorry. And I'm like, oh, apparently this isn't how life was for you? Huh, that's weird. So I'm telling you more of those today. So I'm going to be talking about two things, clothes and hair. Part of this comes from being homeschooled, I think, but this more really speaks to about the conservative Christian background I was raised in with the particular parents I had, because this wasn't even normal for the other homeschoolers I knew, and this wasn't normal for the other kids at my church. If anyone who follows my channel knows, I am trans. So I was not raised a boy. I did not even know I was trans at the time. I knew that I wasn't right as a girl, but I was so sheltered I did not have the vocabulary or the understanding to even know who I was. So that's why I transitioned so much later in life than some other people who have that support and that knowledge. So that being said, take into thought that this is not parents raising a boy. This is not the Wilhelm you see in front of you. This was my parents raising what they thought were two girls, me and my sister. But even so, the rules were the same for both of us. It didn't matter how we expressed ourselves. These were just the way they thought young ladies should be. I think it was more my dad than my mom, but you know what. Anywho, so our hair. Hair is the biggest thing. So we weren't really allowed to cut our hair. We were always known, some people would kind of joke that we were like the hair family. Not my dad, again. This was just for the ladies. So my mom and then the two of us had extremely long hair, which we would usually keep in a braid. Sometimes we let it down. It's part of the reasons I have neck problems to this day from the amount of weight. Of course, I'm short, so maybe this isn't as impressive as some people. But my hair, when I would let it down, would pretty much touch the floor. When it was down, and like especially if it were wet, it would reach pretty much and touch like the backs of my calves. It almost reached the floor. So we're talking well over 4 feet of hair, probably 4.5 feet of hair. And that's a lot. That is a lot. So we weren't allowed to cut our hair. It was the belief of my parents or my dad or whatever that, you know, ladies should have long hair, whatever. So then we got older, and we're just like, no one else has this long hair. It hurts our neck, it's hot, we live in Georgia, and finally we got the okay from the parentals to cut our hair. The first haircut I had in my entire life, I was 12 years old. I was 12, so almost a teenager at this point. I cut it up to my waist. And then, because my dad had the rule, well, you can cut it, but I still want it to come at least to the bottom of your shoulder blades. Okay. And then every year after that, it slowly just got a little shorter and shorter. So we would push the envelope as much as we could. And so my mom was just cutting it home. We didn't go to get it somewhere cut. It was literally, you have a ponytail, snip, straight across, no layers, nothing. Every year it would get a little shorter. And then his rule was, it needs to touch your shoulders. Because there's a verse in the Bible about women having hair that covers their neck. And blah, 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 blah. I didn't break that rule actually until I got married. And we have pictures that show, like, the year we got married, it was down, like, halfway down my arm. The next year, I had cut it up where it was just slightly off my shoulders. And that's when we discovered my hair was so damn curly. So as soon as it got short, it just went sping! So I actually have really tight curls. You can't tell because I keep it so short. So that was our whole thing with our hair. We also had a lot of rules for what we were allowed to wear as far as clothes go. And again, I feel like a lot of this was from my dad than my mom. My mom was just kind of enforcing whatever he said because whatever dad said went. But we had so many rules about what we were allowed to wear. Again, this came from a very conservative household. I think it was more my parents and the way they were raised. And it wasn't this way for other homeschoolers. Some homeschoolers were way worse than us. Some were way more lenient. So this is more talking about my family than it was just being homeschooled. But being homeschooled didn't help any. So yeah. So, clothes. Not sponsored. We weren't allowed to wear shorts unless they touched and like came halfway down our knees. At that point, you're wearing capris. So it's pretty fair to say we just weren't allowed to wear shorts. When we bought pants, we had to bend over forwards so our mom could look at our butt to see if she could see like the outline of our butt or line of our underwear. And if she could, those pants were considered too tight. Ironically, I typically wore a lot of boys' pants growing up, like cargo pants, because they were baggier and I was more comfortable in those, and also I didn't have to do like the bend over test. My parents were like, oh yeah, those are obviously baggy enough. I wore carpenter pants a lot, that carpenter style. So we weren't allowed to wear tight pants. I started wearing them in high school, you know, like skinny jeans style, and of course they got angry, but my excuse was I literally wore a zero and anything else fell off me. I was real skinny back then. Also, for shirts, we weren't allowed to wear low-cut things. So like I've said before, my parents weren't raising the Wilhelm you see before you. They were raising two girls, my sister and me. So they were very concerned about cleavage and showing off the bosoms. So whenever we would pick a shirt, we had to do this little dance, like, and bend. You had to bend to see if they could see down your shirt. And if they could, that shirt was a no-go. It was very difficult. You had to bend this way, see about the pants, bend this way, and see about the shirt. And then dresses and skirts had to come down past your knees. So that way when you sat, you were very ladylike, and they would come over your knees, and no one can see up your skirt. By the way, speaking of shorts, oh look how short my shorts are. Oh no, I'm so indecent. That was kind of the rules that we had for what we were allowed to wear. Oh, also shoulders. We weren't allowed to show shoulders. So we weren't allowed to wear tank tops. Things had to have a wide shoulder. It had to at least, like, cover the edge of your shoulder. So you could have sleeveless, but not tank top. And that always made it fun. I remember from when we went to some of our dances, like our formal dances, ball gowns don't match the rules that were given to us. So my mom literally would buy ribbon and sew large straps onto our dresses, because apparently adding an inch of ribbon over your shoulder suddenly makes you completely modest. She also would sew little shawls for us. Like, we looked like little old ladies, and we had to wear those, and we complained about those so much because it was hot and it was pinching, and also we just hated wearing them. So that's when she started just doing the ribbons instead of the ribbons and the shawl. My mom had to modify a lot of our clothes growing up, so they would match my dad's rules with what people should wear. Also, it was interesting, we did music day camp and VBS and stuff at our church every year, because if our church did something, we did it. Every single event, every single thing, we did it. And I remember one time I got a role, and it was like a baseball themed show, and I was supposed to be wearing, I love that I'm sorry, I just looked at my screen. I love that I'm talking about this decency, and we have this sexy AF mannequin back here with his booty shorts showing his midriff. I just love it. I love that this is the person I am become now. We also weren't allowed to show midriffs. Like, if we bent over and you could see the butt or the tum, we had to raise our arms, and if it pulled up and you could see the tummy, we weren't allowed to get the shirt. Anyway, back onto the VBS thing. It was baseball themed, and I was on the cast in the baseball team. Well, y'all know how baseball pants are. They're meant to be tight because they're baseball pants. You're trying to reduce wind resistance. You're athletic. They need to move and be stretchy and move with you. But my parents were just, oh my goodness, you can't wear those. Oh my goodness, they're just so too tight, blah, blah, blah. And also, I was tiny. I was extremely tiny. So the smalls were too big for me. But they bought me larges and required me to wear them. I remember, like, my mom hemming in the waist to try to keep them from falling off my hips, and I had to tuck my shirt in and kept pulling it up. I looked like a grandpa because it kept falling down because I looked so frumpy. And I have pictures of me, like, in the line with all the rest of the baseball team on stage, and they look like normal little kids in baseball uniforms, and there's me who looks like a grandpa with my baggy shirt, because we weren't allowed to have anything tight, and my baggy pants. So, yeah. And I have tons of other stories like that, too, so if you want to hear more about the absolute horrors of that, let me know in the comments. I have 30 years of stories I would love to regale you with, and that's what this whole series is all about.